She shared tales of too much wine, and tricks, and, most importantly, of hope. Though she held very little of it herself, Lore didn't tell the children that surely no god or goddess was going to save them. The only person she told this to was Gray. "What makes you think the elders are right, and the answers lie in the stars?" her oldest friend asked, his brow furrowed as he worked at mending his warmest pair of pants. "There are many legends, but they all have one thing in common: the sky. That's why we look through the sky glass on our 8th name day. It's why our church has no roof. The answers lie there. I'm sure of it," Lore replied. She was pouring hot wax into molds. She had spent the last year perfecting the scent of her juniper and sage candles, and never tired of making them. "Well, you know what I think?" Gray said, his raspy voice muffled by the thread between his teeth. He tied off the last stitch. "That the answers are to be found outside Duskmere?" "Why else aren't we allowed to leave?" he asked, raising the trousers to inspect them. "Because the Fae are cruel," she suggested. He couldn't argue with her there. "I just don't see how the answers could be out there if we're the only humans in Aletheria," she continued. "Most of our history was lost in the crossing between worlds. We won't find it in this one." "That's not what you used to believe. You were the one who put this in my head, this need to escape, and to search out there for answers." Lore shrugged. "I told you, my feelings have changed. There isn't any point in trying to leave Duskmere. That's a child's dream." The words tasted of ash, and Lore had to glance away as she began to trim the wicks on the batch of candles that had already set. She was no longer a child. There was no leaving Duskmere. For hundreds of years, they'd been confined to the town because the Aletherian Fae would never let them leave. Believing otherwise was a waste of time. "Well, why won't you tell me what changed? Aging out of the shelter, packing a bag, and scouring the world for answers used to be all you would talk about. You used to beg me to come with you. That was a long time ago. Now I have to be here to help Auntie and Uncle. They're getting much too old to take care of all 15 children. You're telling me you're content to stay here? To live above the apothecary, until you eventually move back into the shelter and take Eshe and Salim's place?" Gray's voice was exasperated. They had had this conversation before, and he already knew her answer. "There is honor in caring for those who cannot care for themselves, Gray. And besides, I love it here." The apothecary they were sitting in was small, with an even smaller second floor, due to the slant of the roof. Boxes were heaped around, obscuring their view of most everything. But through an open door, she could just make out her cramped room. It contained everything she owned: her sleeping mat, one crooked wooden shelf that held her clothes and journals, and a stack of books that she'd loved too much to sell. The rest of the space was the studio, where Auntie Eshe and Lore made candles, salves, remedies, tinctures, and soap. It was where she devoured stories and copied them out, letter by letter, to sell in the apothecary during her free time. And though books were a luxury, people still cherished and purchased them when they could afford to. Gray was sitting on a laughably small stool, better suited to a child, with his long legs crossed before him, and his broad shoulders squeezed in between two shelves filled with herbs and empty jars. "I hate it when you lie to me," he said at last. There was a note of defeat in his voice. Lore frowned, stung. If she couldn't admit the truth to herself, why would she admit it to Gray? She couldn't tell him that she still believed the answers were out there, somewhere beyond the barrier surrounding their town, or that at night, she still dreamed of leaving Duskmere and solving the great mystery of how her people came to be trapped in these lands. She couldn't tell Gray she had another, secret explanation, that it had not been the wrath of an angry god, nor the blunder of an inept one that brought them here. Instead,